Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a guide for round 20 of the manufacturer series. Let's get this started. Start to brake just before the path on the left ends. Brake as much as you can for a short while. Ease off the brakes as you turn in and take advantage of the dip where the first apex is. Try to steering up the car as fast as you can before you start to fully accelerate. Now bring yourself to the right side of the track, and with a track piece on the right ends, you want to start to brake. Ease off of the brakes, bring yourself to the left, and brake when the curb on the left ends. Just try to get the car to quickly rotate around this corner before you start to fully accelerate. Now stay on the left side, and when the gray curb on the left starts, that is when you brake. Try to stay on second gear for the Porsche, and just let the car rotate around this turn, and once you point away from the tent, you can then fully accelerate. Ease off the throttle for this turn, and if you do it right, you will only have to ease off the throttle for the left turn. Now bring yourself to the right and brake before you reach the 100-meter mark. Gently accelerate out of this turn, bring yourself to the left, and use some braking as you make your way through this turn. Just get the car to rotate as fast as you can so you can get a fast exit. For this chicane, you'll be braking just before the 50-meter mark, so you'll brake hard for a moment, ease off of the brakes, and carefully accelerate. Now bring yourself as far to the right as you can, and brake before you reach the dry patch of grass that is on the left. Bring yourself to the inside of the turn, try not to get on the curbs, gently accelerate, and brake when the pit wall on the right ends. Once again, just get the car to rotate as quickly as you can before you accelerate. Bring yourself to the left and do a quick lift off of the throttle, then fully accelerate. Now bring yourself to the right, look for this dry patch of grass that is on the right, and you'll be braking when you reach that dry patch. Do not get too much onto the curbs, fully accelerate through this left turn, and use quick bursts of braking for the next two turns. Now when the tarmac changes, you can then start to brake. Do not get too much onto the curbs. Just after you make this jump, you want to do a quick lift off of the throttle and carefully start to accelerate. You do not want to make contact with the grass. When you reach the second set of signs right here, do a quick lift off of the throttle, bring yourself to the left and brake when the curb on the left ends. Gently ease off of the brakes and gently start to accelerate. Your next braking point is going to be this patch of dry grass that is on the right. So you'll brake right here, brake hard for a short moment, slowly ease off of the brakes as you make your way through this turn. Brake just before you turn here, then brake before you reach the crosswalk. Stick to the left side, then bring yourself to the right, just controlling your throttle as you make your way through those turns. Use a small amount of brakes as you make your way through this turn, then just after you pass the writing on the ground, that is when you brake, gently accelerate your way out, then brake when you reach the white signs on the left. Take your time accelerating through this turn. Bring yourself to the right, and for this little chicane, you can do a quick lift off of the throttle if necessary. Brake when you reach the curb on the right, just use some braking, not all of it, and when you reach the dry patch of grass on the left, you can then start to brake, control your braking power along the way. Go up a gear to maintain stability on the car over here, then eventually bring yourself to the right and brake when the curb on the right ends. Gently accelerate your way out. Do not take too much advantage of the curbs. Brake when the curb on the left ends. Get the car straightened out before you start to fully accelerate. There's going to be a blue dot on the ground that you'll be using as your braking point. Brake just as you pass it, so you'll be braking hard for a short moment. Gently ease off of the brakes and carefully start to accelerate. So for this next turn right here, you can lift off of the throttle, You can use a little bit of braking if necessary to avoid contact with the grass on the right. You can also do a quick lift off the throttle here, then brake when the curb on the left starts. Just take your time, slowly starting to accelerate. Then you're going to bring yourself a bit towards the right side of the track. Brake just after you pass the happy little tree on the left. Just bring yourself to the inside of the turn, controlling your throttle, and then fully accelerate once the car is pointing where you want to go. You can take this left turn at full throttle, but then you want to brake when the curb on the right starts. Brake hard for just a moment, then control your throttle inputs. When you reach the track marshals on the right, that is when you want to start to brake. So you brake hard for a moment, slowly ease off of the brakes, slowly accelerate. This right turn can be taken at full throttle. You can do a small lift if necessary. Then just brake your way through these next couple of turns, controlling your throttle and braking if necessary. You want to be pretty careful here so that you don't end up going too wide, and you can brake pretty late over here for these turns. Just try to stay on third gear as much as you can, and it's only until here where you can then go down to second gear. Just be nice and gentle with your throttle input, and when you reach the dry patch of grass on the right, you can then start to brake. This turn is a little bit long and drawn out, so take your time slowly accelerating. Just before you make this jump, you want to start to brake, gently start to apply the throttle, and when you make this left turn, you want to do a quick lift off of the throttle as there's a little bump, and if you go through it at full throttle, it can potentially throw your car off track. And just take these turns at full throttle, taking advantage of the track limits. And just before you start to turn, you want to start to use some of your braking power. When the grade curb on the right ends, that's your braking point. Then brake when you reach this white sign on the right. Just be very careful over here as it is easy to lose control on the inside of the turn. Use some of your braking power when the curb on the left ends. Just try to be very gentle with your throttle input. Do a quick lift off of the throttle and then fully accelerate. So we'll fast forward through this. In the Porsche, stay on 5th gear until you're just about to reach the very top of this hill. You can brake pretty late here, brake when the curb on the right ends, and just try to bring yourself all the way to the right side of the track. Carefully accelerate, do not make contact with the wall on the right, and you are good to go. But that is all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and quickly talk about the strategies. For the qualifying session, you will have 14 minutes, not 10 as you see on the screen here, to try to get a good qualifying time. So with these 14 minutes, what you want to do on your outlap are two things. One, you want to make sure that the tires don't get too worn out so you don't have to go all out the moment you get out of the pit stop. And two, you want to try to make yourself be as alone as possible. So the thing is that even though the slipstream will help you go even faster, that means that you'll eventually end up catching up to the car ahead of you, which then means that you have to be a bit more careful around them, which will end up hurting your own qualifying time. You also do not want to battle with anyone during your qualifying lap, as that will hurt your own qualifying time as well. And once again, with this 14-minute qualifying session, you'll have more than enough time to do what you need to do before you start your qualifying lap. And as you do your actual qualifying lap, when the timer hits 0, a second qualifying time will start, which then means that you'll have, I think it's around 9 or 10 minutes to try to finish up your qualifying lap. So it'll be more than enough to be able to do what you need to do. So try to start your qualifying session when there is 1 to 4 minutes left on your qualifying session. That way you can hopefully guarantee that you are pretty much alone and will not come across anyone during your qualifying lap. And with the tire wear, even though the tire wear rate is pretty low at times 4, you just want to try to not stress out those tires too much on your outlap. That way you can get the maximum grip out of those tires as you do your actual qualifying lap. And once again, with this 14-minute qualifying session, you'll only have one chance to try to get that good qualifying time, so just try to be squeaky clean. Do not battle with anyone. Try to space yourself out before you start your qualifying lap. For the race strategy, you want to use racing hard tires for only one lap, since those are the required tires for this race. For the other 2 laps, you will be using the racing medium tires since they provide a lot more grip than the racing hard tires, and since the tire wear rate is pretty low here, you will not have to worry about the racing medium tires getting worn to an extreme. So this race is actually more of a fuel race since fuel will be an issue here. In the Porsche, you can shift when the bar on the bottom of the screen is at around 50% full, just to try to save as much fuel as you can, and you can adjust the fuel mapping as you see here to try to save even more fuel. So there are a couple of sections of the track where there's a lot more twists and turns, so you can bring the fuel map towards a leaner setting so you can save up a bit more fuel along the way. So you can use the D-pad on your DS4 controller to scroll the multifunction display on the bottom right corner of your screen to bring up the fuel mapping, and then you can adjust its values as you go along in the race. So for example, in this part over here, you're not using too much power, so you can bring the fuel map down to 3, or if you can bring it down even more. This will make the car accelerate a little bit slower, but it will save you a bit more fuel along the way. Your goal is to get as close to using 33% of fuel each lap. So once again, with the short shifting and the fuel map adjustments, you should be able to get pretty close to this number. And I would like to note that when you are short shifting, some cars might be able to fuel save a bit more, so they might be able to fuel save at higher revs, whereas other cars may not be so good at fuel saving, so they might need to shift even earlier to try to make the fuel last as long as possible. So as you see here, second place is about a second away from me. We're going to enter the pit stop, and we have 32% of fuel left, while second place has 12% fuel left. So as you see here, we're only going to go for a splash and dash because we were able to save up so much fuel along the way. And that 1 second gap is going to become 6 seconds of a gap. And also just make sure that you brake early for this turn when you come out of the pit stop so you don't end up doing this. So by fuel saving, you'll spend less time refueling during your pit stop, and because of that, it will be possible to increase the gap of those who were behind you when you went to the pit stop, and it will also be possible to even overtake those who were ahead of you but end up refueling for longer periods of time. And that is pretty much it. So make sure you fuel save as much as you can by short shifting and adjusting the fuel mapping where possible. And you only have to use racing hard tires for one lap, since those are the required tires for this race. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this guide. And once again, as I mentioned in the Nations Cup guide video, I will be taking a short break from editing the FIA guide videos, so I will not be around for rounds 21 and 22. The daily race guides will also not be affected by this, and the Super Cup guide, that should be coming out tomorrow. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is Mr. MCA, wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.